The people who rode in this car are dead. And the real tragedy is that they were innocent victims. The driver of the other car, the car that smashed into them, was drunk. And he's dead too. Tests have shown that he had a drink problem. Now, this may not seem like the right time or place to give a test, but I hope you'll take one anyhow. Our reasons for asking you to take it are good. Just answer yes or no to the questions I'm going to ask. Do you drink any kind of alcoholic beverage when you get up in the morning or before, say, 10 o'clock? Do you drink alone more often than with a group? Do you sometimes feel a little guilty about your drink? Do you find a lot of occasions and situations that seem to call for a drink? Do you find that after drinking you have memory blackouts? That's the test. Now let's see what it tells us. If you've answered yes to one or more of the questions, you're in trouble. One or more yes answers make your chances of being involved in a mess like this, of being killed or injured in a traffic accident, 25 times greater than those of the person whose answers are all no. Our reasons for asking you those questions about your drinking habits are to awaken you to what seems to be a major cause of death and bloodshed on our streets and highways today. Several recent studies have revealed the problem drinker, the alcoholic or the potential alcoholic, as one of the most vicious threats to safety on our streets and highways. If the evidence to date means anything, 4 to 5 of every 10 traffic fatalities can be linked to people in the various stages of chronic alcoholism. There isn't complete agreement as yet on the evidence, but as it mounts, there can be no question about its importance. Let's take a look.
The victim here, Russell R., age 55, insurance executive, prominent clubman, married, father of 4, grandfather of 7, veteran of World War II, university graduate. In 34 years of driving, involved in 3 serious accidents. The deceased in this picture, Catherine D., age 38, housewife and mother graduate. Once very active in community affairs, husband and architect. Her fatal mistake, failure to respond quickly enough in an emergency situation while driving. The deceased, Louis R., age 32, auto mechanic, divorced after 14 years of marriage. High school dropout, no activities, no hobbies, no insurance. His mistake, driving a mobile once too often. The deceased, with campus affairs, former high school football star, son of a well-known attorney. His deadly error, letting excess become a habit. Four people, all of different ages and backgrounds, but with 2 things in common. All met sudden and violent death in traffic accidents, and all had drinking problems, which, when linked of a motor vehicle, increased by 25 times their chances of dying as they did. All probably would have answered yes to one or more of the questions asked earlier by Governor Reagan. Significantly, of the 4, only one aroused any suspicion about his drinking habits. The other 3 were not considered to be problem drinkers, that is, not until the coroner and the autopsy surgeon did their job. All of which becomes even more frightening when related to the evidence that 1 of every 12 adult Americans today is in one stage or another of alcoholism, with the number increasing rapidly. Some experts say that if the present trend continues, there will come a time in a not-so-distant future when 1 of every 5 adults might have a serious drinking problem. 40 million people by 1990 will have substantially multiplied their chances of killing themselves and others on our streets and highways. The problem drinker isn't exactly a new suspect in traffic accidents, but new evidence and statistics seem to give him a far more menacing role than previously believed probable. A number of research groups, including the California Traffic Safety Foundation, have compiled some rather appalling statistics.
From studies coordinated by the California Traffic Safety Foundation among 47 California coroners, we have determined quite conclusively that more than half, some 50 to 60% of the adult drivers dying in motor vehicle accidents have had some alcohol to drink. Some 43% of them have had enough alcohol to definitely put them in the category of suspicion as problem drinkers, if not full-blown alcoholics. If we look at just those who died while drinking, some 86% of these have had blood alcohols sufficiently high enough to place them legally under the influence of alcohol, and most of them, again, in that high blood alcohol range, indicating a problem drinker or alcoholic.
Research groups in other states have also run blood alcohol studies with similar results. In most, some 40 to 45% of the dead drivers have shown a blood alcohol content of 0.10 or higher. Most medical authorities regard a 0.1% blood alcohol level as evidence of drunkenness. Some doctors in some states believe an even lower percentage indicates intoxication, with more than a 0.10 pointing to a possible drinking problem. There are still a few experts who question the evidence, but most have no doubts.
The problem was to ascertain first how many people had alcohol to significant degrees in their body at the time that fatal accidents occurred, and secondly to learn what we could relative to the nature of the individual who may be so involved. Now, contrary to popular belief, we found it's not the social drinker who is most often involved in serious or fatal accidents. It is the chronic alcoholic. And this was a very worthwhile thing to discover. And it's rather interesting as to how we came about it. In the course of the autopsy, we always examine the liver of every person who has died in an auto accident. And from the liver, you can learn whether or not a person was a chronic alcoholic. And thus, after the person died, we could establish what his living habits were. And as a consequence of learning that it's a chronic alcoholic who is a real problem, we feel there's been a contribution in that we know now we must direct our attention either to helping him or to taking steps to protect society against him or from him. It would be interesting to point out that, contrary to common belief, it is true that we do autopsies and a great deal of work on dead people, but it's evident we've never done a dead man any good. And really, all the work that we do is to help the living and the community in which we live, so that whenever we have any opportunity to take part in the study, which may well benefit the community, we feel obliged to do so, as we did in this particular study here.
Recently, another cooperating piece of evidence has been supplied by the California Highway Patrol, whose job it is to police the state's highways and freeways.
In the field of the drinking driver, the California Highway Patrol have made a number of special studies. The particular one is one involving single vehicles where there was a death resulting within 15 minutes of the accident. In this particular type of accident, we found there is a very high incidence of drinking. In fact, in 4 out of every 5 accidents, there had been drinking, and in a majority of the accidents, the man was at a high level of intoxication, actually over 0.20 blood alcohol content. In view of the new law of presumptive limits, which indicates that 0.10 is under the influence and in violation of law, you can readily see that this person was quite well under the influence of liquor.
Well, nationally, of course, it's a continuing disaster that goes back many decades. We are killing, as the federal report last year pointed out, about 25,000 Americans each year, many of them completely innocent victims. We are having about 800,000, approaching 1 million crashes of all varieties, many of them serious, many resulting in facial disfigurement, paraplegia, and permanent damage, sometimes extremely permanent brain damage. There are several different parts of the problem. The public needs to understand this. They include particularly young males who are experimenting with alcohol, sick drinkers, alcoholics, and exceptionally heavy social drinkers.
Let's summarize what we've heard about the problem drinker and traffic accidents. Currently available statistics gathered by recognized research groups and individuals indicate that of every 100 fatal traffic accidents, approximately 56 can be linked to drivers who are, to one degree or another, under the influence of alcohol. A relatively small number of these, about 13, are what we generally describe as social drinkers, people who do not habitually drink to excess. 43, almost one-half of every 100 dead drivers, are by accepted medical standards problem drinkers, alcoholics, unable to respond properly to hazardous driving situations that arise on busy streets and highways. To understand why their ability to drive safely is impaired, we must understand what alcohol does to the human system and why it becomes a problem.
Alcohol is a depressant sedative type of compound, belongs to the group of agents which depress mental facility, activity, and awareness. The first effects are on the higher centers of the brain, causing a general decrease in awareness, decrease in self-discipline and evaluation of propriety, interfering with the normal behavior pattern of the person. So it acts as a compound that takes off the veneer that civilization has put on the control of human performance, and it makes it act at a more basic level. It's essentially a depressant that in high doses may lead to a decrease in the function of the brain to the point that anesthesia may occur, or this may be followed even by coma and death. So it decreases coordination and muscular abilities, gives a false sense of ability that isn't in keeping with a person's performance. The driving of a motor vehicle is a very complex task requiring judgment, the performance of a learned skill, very quick action and reaction, perception, evaluation of the situations about one. And alcohol as a depressant decreases the person's ability to perform this learned task.
So who is the problem drinker? Actually, he can be anyone. The businessman who numerous times during his working day and after feels a compelling need for a relaxing drink, a need to which in most cases he will not admit even to himself. Or the housewife who, with her family away for the day, seeks escape from the countless homemaking problems of modern life. Drinking is easier than facing stark reality. Or the mechanic or painter or clerk or teacher who uses alcohol as a crutch to get through the long days and longer nights, to relieve boredom and discontent. Problem drinkers and alcoholics are found in every walk and on every level of our life. And there are countless reasons, both psychological and physical, why they drink heavily and constantly. The effect, however, is the same on all. A blood alcohol content always at or above the medically accepted level for intoxication. In short, they are always drunk, though they may not show it or know it. Their problem is often hidden even from themselves and their families. They have learned to live with alcohol, functioning in a seemingly normal way most of the time. As has been said before, in the case of the problem driver-drinker, it is frequently the coroner who is the first to spot the problem. When a problem drinker climbs behind the wheel of a car, he may seem sober and capable of handling the demands of safe driving, but he is affected, whether he realizes it or not. He often travels too fast. He drives in spurts, slow, then fast, then slow, and so on. He frequently changes lanes at excessive speed. He passes other vehicles without allowing proper and safe distance. He overshoots or disregards traffic signs and signals. He stops, then starts jerkily. He drives too close to road shoulders or street curbs. He hugs the side of the road or straddles a lane line. And he has many other bad driving habits, all of them potentially dangerous, all capable of drawing blood and taking lives. The actions of this driver are a case in point. He is driving a good, safe car on a good road in good weather, but he's a prime candidate for a ride in an ambulance or hearse. He's been drinking all day, as he does every day. Not a lot, but enough to keep his blood alcohol level above the point of medical sobriety. As a result, his ability is impaired, and he's not fully capable of handling all of the situations that can occur in driving. Some very revealing studies of the drunk driver have been done in the driving simulator at the University of California at Los Angeles. Here, a curved Cinerama-type motion picture screen and a real car are used to create realistic traffic situations, a portion of the brain which receives information from the senses and makes decisions based on that information. In short, it doesn't take the drunk any longer than a sober person to turn his wheels or to hit his brakes once he's made up his mind to act. And that's where the delay comes in, the delay that may cost his or other lives. Experiments with the simulator have also shown that the same kind of delayed decision-making is also possible as a result of other factors, including emotional stress, fatigue, nutritional defects, tranquilizing drugs, and other common medications, all of which have the potential to depress the central nervous system and brain in the same way as alcohol, and consequently to affect driving in a similar manner. The studies have also pointed the finger of suspicion at the hangover. Dr. Slade Hulbert, who supervises the simulator studies, suspects that the person suffering the after effects of a binge may be as great a menace as the drunk driver. He hopes to pursue this subject and others, which may throw even more light on the dark picture of traffic accidents. But back to the problem drinker. What can we do about him? How can we keep him out of cars, where he seems to be involved in an appalling number of fatal crashes? Can and should anything be done other than putting him in jail or fining him and then turning him loose again on our streets and highways?
Such a person is sick in terms of having an emotional problem, but he is still responsible for his acts. The fact that he has a elevated blood alcohol level, his driving is impaired, that he is more likely statistically to be involved in serious accidents, either with himself alone or involving other people, in my opinion, requires, for society's sake, a stern enforcement of those regulations that protect the public as regards driving under the influence of alcohol. And whether he has an illness or whether he has an emotional problem, still doesn't mitigate the end result of the likelihood of serious injury to someone else. Such a person should be rehabilitated if possible, but in my opinion should be barred from the highways if he has repetitive arrests because of his drinking problem.
Any person who gets into trouble because of alcohol should not necessarily be regarded as a criminal. Alcoholism could occur to any person, male, female, children, adults, of any age. We've had patients as young as 15 years of age, and we've had them as old as 78, 79, early 80s, who came in presenting with the disease of alcoholism. All that one has to do to become an alcoholic is to drink alcohol. Punitive measures are in no way a deterrent for alcohol, especially when alcohol can be purchased as widely, as freely, and is accepted by as many people as it currently is in our country.
Well, this has been a long time problem, to be sure. How to cure the alcoholic of his drinking, I'm not prepared to say. This is out of my field. I do, however, believe that serious consideration should be given to perhaps denying him a license to drive. Right now, when a family physician learns that a person has epilepsy and is a threat to society, insofar as driving is concerned, his license is taken away. So too, perhaps a chronic alcoholic should have his license taken away. And one thing for certain, the courts are very lenient in this matter, and maybe very positive steps may be taken there to be a little more severe or more exacting with the chronic alcoholic relative to his driving privileges.
The drinking driver, in many instances, is a special type of person, a person with profound problems, psychological, physiological, that he is trying to cure by alcohol. We think that this special problem must receive real attention from the total community.
There must be lodged an educational campaign by our society, by industry, by the community, by the government, all directing itself to not only the hazards of drinking driving, but the needs for the individual to become much more aware of the problems involved with drinking driving. And in this way, this tremendous publicity campaign, we may hopefully affect social policy so that the average individual drinking will no longer want to drive. And hopefully this itself will affect to a much greater degree than our present techniques the tremendous toll with traffic fatalities that are related to drinking driving.
Well, first of all, there is no single answer, and anyone that suggests this is deceiving himself or others. The separate parts of the problem need to be handled separately. The alcoholic needs treatment, the teenager perhaps punishment or education. In short, there should be a mix of approaches to this. It's particularly important that the police need the authority that the police in the United Kingdom have, under which they can check someone in a crash or committing a serious violation to see if he is drunk. This is not the case anywhere in the United States at present.
That's the picture. Not complete, but obviously not very pretty. The number of fatal accidents on our streets and highways is increasing, with more than half of them involving drivers under the influence of alcohol. And of these drinking drivers, some 82% seem, by the best evidence available today, to have serious alcoholic problems. More detail is needed to complete the picture. Many questions remain to be answered. How do we detect the driver with a drinking problem before he kills himself and others? How do we handle him? Do we revoke or restrict his driving privileges? Do we treat him as a criminal with stiffer jail sentences or increased fines? Do we look at him as a sick person and attempt to rehabilitate him? There are other questions, too. For example, do emotional disturbances, fatigue, the tranquilizing drugs, and other common medications affect the ability to drive in much the same manner as alcohol? Are there antidotes for their effects? Lots of people today are seeking the needed answers through research and study, just as they're seeking answers about heart attack, cancer, and the other killer problems. The direction here is obvious. More support for research groups and projects. More support for lawmakers who are seeking answers. More interest on a very personal level from the public. We're not going to stop drinking, and it's not possible to stop everybody who drinks from driving. We're not going to stop all the emotionally disturbed and tired people from getting behind the wheel of a car. We're not going to stop the use of tranquilizers and other depressant medication. But it is possible, we believe, to control those persons whose chances of killing themselves and others in traffic are 25 times greater than those of most of us. The experts believe we can counteract and control to some degree those things which now seem to be vital causal factors in traffic accidents. And we, you and I, can make it work if we refuse to accept loss of life on our streets and highways as a natural cause of death.